She was forced to give her baby to rogues as tribute. The vampire king came and hunted them all chapter 1. The tributeth winter wind cut through Alara's cloak like a knife through silk. But she barely felt it. Her arms were wrapped around the bundled weight of her daughter 3 months old, soft-cheeked. Silent in sleep, and nothing else mattered. Not the frozen mud beneath her boots. Not the jeers of the villagers who'd shoved her toward the forest's edge. Not even the terror that made her knees shake with every step deeper into the trees. They'd given her until moonrise. After that, the rogues would come for the baby themselves, and they wouldn't be gentle about it. Alara's breath misted in the cold air as she stumbled over a root, catching herself against a gnarled oak. The forest pressed in around her, ancient and indifferent. Somewhere in these woods lived the creatures. Her village paid tribute to vampires cast out from the great houses, feral and lawless, surviving on whatever blood they could steal or extort. Every 7 years, the village offered them a child, old enough to survive the journey, young enough to be malleable. Her daughter stirred against her chest, making a small sound of protest, and Alara's heart cracked open all over again. "I'm sorry," she whispered into the baby's dark hair. "I'm so sorry." She tried everything, begged the council, offered herself instead, threatened to run. But her former husband, had sealed her fate when he publicly declared the child wasn't his. A bastard born of shame, he called her. Proof of Alara's adultery. The magistrate had been swift in his judgment. The child would fulfill the village's obligation, and Alara would be cast out after, her reputation destroyed, her small bakery seized, all lies. But powerful lies spoken by a man the village respected. The clearing appeared suddenly. A break in the dense canopy where moonlight pooled like spilled milk. In its center stood a stone altar weathered by centuries, stained dark with things Alara didn't want to imagine. Around its base, offerings rotted, moldy bread, dead chickens, rusted coins. Her daughter woke fully now, beginning to fuss. Alara bounced her gently, tears streaming freely down her face. "Hush, little love, hush." But the baby's cries grew louder, echoing through the trees. And something in the darkness answered. Dr. spun, clutching her daughter tighter. Shadows moved at the edge of the clearing, too fluid to be natural, too purposeful to be wind. She counted 3 figures emerging from the trees. No, 4. Their movements were wrong, predatory, and possibly silent despite the undergrowth. The lead rogue stepped into the moonlight, and Alara's stomach turned. He might have been handsome once before whatever had made him into this. His skin was gray-pale, stretched tight over sharp bones. His eyes gleamed red in the darkness, and when he smiled, his fangs were stained brown with old blood. "Right on time," he said, his voice a wet rasp. "We could smell the little one from half a mile away. Sweet, fresh blood." Still untainted, the other rogues circled closer, sniffing the air. One of them, a woman with matted hair and a torn dress, laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Please," Alara said, backing toward the altar even though it offered no protection. "Please, there has to be another way. Take me instead." "My blood, your blood is common," the lead rogue interrupted, soured by fear and cheap ale. "But a child," he inhaled deeply, eyes fluttering close in ecstasy. "A child's blood sings, pure, innocent, will drain her slowly, make her last through the winter." Alara's vision tunneled. Her daughter's cries had become screams now, as if the baby could sense the hunger surrounding them. Without thinking, Alara turned and ran. She made it 3 steps before something slammed into her back, driving her to her knees. The impact knocked her daughter from her arms. The baby landed in the dead leaves with a wail, and Alara lunged for her. But clawed hands caught her hair, yanking her backwards. "Stupid," the rogue hissed in her ear. "You'll watch her die first for that." Alara thrashed, screaming, fighting with desperate strength. She felt skin tear under her nails, heard fabric rip. The rogue cursed and threw her aside. She hit the altar hard enough to see stars, tasted copper in her mouth. Through blurred vision, she saw the female rogue bend over her daughter, reaching down with hands that ended in black-stained talons. Then the air itself seemed to shatter. The cold intensified until Alara's next breath burned her lungs. The moonlight dimmed, shadows deepening impossibly, and a presence entered the clearing, something so ancient and powerful that even the rogues froze, their heads snapping up like wolves scenting a larger predator. He appeared at the clearing's edge, and for a moment, Alara thought death itself had arrived. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in black that seemed woven from the night itself. His face was carved from marble, beautiful and terrible in equal measure, with high cheekbones, a stern mouth, and eyes that burned gold in the darkness. Not red like the rogues. Gold, bright and hot as forged fire. The lead rogue recovered first. "Lord," he said, dropping to one knee. "We weren't expecting we're within our territory. The tribute was promised. You prey on children now, Matthias?" The newcomer's voice was soft, cultured, and absolutely lethal. Each word fell like a judge's gavel. "How far the fallen have sunk, the village owes us," the rogue Matthias argued. But his bravado had crumbled. The old laws, the vampire said, moving forward with fluid grace. Forbid the forced taking of innocent blood. They forbid preying on the helpless. They forbid. His eyes swept the clearing, landing on Alara's daughter. He reached the baby in 3 strides. Alara tried to stand to stop him, but her body wouldn't obey. She could only watch as he bent down and gathered her daughter into his arms with surprising gentleness. The baby's cries quieted. Immediately, the vampire turned those burning gold eyes on Alara. This child is yours? She nodded, finding her voice. Please don't hurt her. Something flickered across his perfect features, almost like pain. I have no interest in harming children. He looked at Matthias. You and your pack have one chance. Leave now. Return to whatever hole you've been festering in. If I find you hunting in this territory again, I will end you in ways that make true death seem merciful. But the tribute, there will be no more tributes. The vampire's voice dropped to a register that made Alara's bones ache. I am Cashin of House Knox, enforcer of the Night Court, and I declare this practice ended. Spread the word to every rogue pack, every desperate village. The old corruption dies tonight. The rogues fled. One moment they were there, the next they dissolved into shadows. Their retreat marked only by the rustling of disturbed leaves. Alara and the vampire were alone in the moonlit clearing, her daughter cradled in his arms. He approached the altar slowly, giving Alara time to scramble to her feet despite her injuries. When he held out the baby, his movements were careful, controlled. She's unharmed, he said quietly. Alara took her daughter with shaking hands, checking her over frantically. No marks, no wounds. The baby had already begun to doze again. One tiny fist curled against her mouth. Thank you. Alara whispered. Thank you. I don't know how to. The rogues will return. Cashin interrupted. Perhaps not tonight, but soon. They've tasted the possibility of easy prey here. Your village has been feeding them for too long. His gold eyes studied her with unsettling intensity. You're injured. You'll be cast out if you return. And that child will always be a target. Alara's throat tightened. She knew he was right. Then what do I do? The vampire was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, almost reluctant. Come with me. Both of you. I have a stronghold 3 days' travel from here. You'll be safe there until I can unravel this mess your village has created. You're inviting us to live with you? A vampire? A ghost of something humor? Bitterness? Crossed his face. I've been called worse than kind. But understand this, I do not offer a sanctuary lightly, and I do not tolerate betrayal. If you accept, you'll be under my protection. You'll also be under my rules. Alara looked down at her daughter, then back at the forest path that led to her village, to her ruined life, her lost home, the people who'd sacrificed her child without hesitation. There was no choice at all. We'll come, she said. Cashin inclined his head, something unreadable in his ancient eyes. Then we leave now. The night is still young, and I don't trust those rogues to stay frightened for long. He turned and began walking toward the deeper forest, and Alara, exhausted, terrified, grateful, followed the vampire into the darkness, her daughter sleeping peacefully against her heart. Chapter 2. The stronghold journey through the forest lasted hours, though Alara lost track of time somewhere between midnight and dawn. Cashin moved like smoke through the trees, never stumbling, never hesitating, while she struggled to keep pace with her daughter bundled against her chest. He didn't speak, didn't look back, but somehow he always slowed when she fell too far behind, as if he could sense her exhaustion without turning around. When her legs finally gave out, collapsing beneath her on a moss-covered slope, he stopped. We're close, he said, still facing forward. Can you manage another quarter mile? Alara wanted to say yes, wanted to prove she wasn't weak, wasn't a burden, but her body had reached its limit. The adrenaline that had carried her through the clearing had long since burned away, leaving only pain and bone-deep fatigue. I don't think so, she admitted, hating how small her voice sounded. Cashin turned then, studying her in the pre-dawn gloom. His gold eyes seemed to glow faintly like banked coals. After a moment, he moved closer and held out his arms. I can carry you both. Alara instinctively clutched her daughter tighter. I can walk. Just give me a minute. You're bleeding through your cloak. His voice was matter-of-fact, not unkind. You hit that altar harder than you realize. If you collapse again, you might drop the child. She looked down and saw he was right. Dark stains had spread across the fabric at her shoulder and ribs. She hadn't even felt it through the numbness. I will not harm either of you, Cashin said quietly. You have my word, and I do not give it lightly. There was something in his tone of formality, almost an ancient weight that made her believe him. Or perhaps she was simply too exhausted to care anymore. She nodded. He lifted them both with disturbing ease, one arm supporting her back, the other cradling her daughter between them. His body was cold to the touch, not cold exactly, but ups in the warmth of living flesh. Alara's head fell against his shoulder, and she caught the scent of him night air, old leather, and something darker. Something that whispered of cribs and centuries. Sleep if you need to, he murmured. We'll be there soon. She tried to stay awake, but darkness claimed her anyway. Alara woke to stone and silence. She was lying on something soft to bed. She realized, with actual linens that smelled faintly of lavender. Panic seized her immediately, and she bolted upright, ignoring the screaming protest from her ribs. Your daughter was here. The voice came from the shadows near the door. Cashin stood there, still as a statue, and gestured to a wooden cradle beside the bed. Alara lunged for it, nearly falling in her haste, and found her baby sleeping peacefully. Swaddled in clean cloth, relief weakened her knees. She sank onto the edge of the bed, one hand resting protectively on the cradle's edge. How long was I asleep? Most of the day. It's nearly sunset now. Cashin moved slightly, and she realized he was keeping his distance deliberately, staying near the door. I cleaned and bandaged your wounds while you slept. You have to cracked ribs and severe bruising, but nothing that won't heal. The thought of him touching her while unconscious should have been terrifying. Instead, she felt only a strange, detached gratitude. Thank you, there's food on the table, water, whatever you need. Alara looked around properly for the first time. The room was small but well-appointed, stone walls softened by tapestries. A fireplace with banked coals, a heavy wooden door with iron hinges. The single window was narrow and set high in the wall, currently showing the deep purple of approaching dusk. Where are we? My stronghold as promised. It's built into the mountainside, hidden by old magic and older architecture. No rogue will find you here. He paused. No one will. Unless I allow it. That should have sounded like a threat. Somehow, it felt like protection. Alara stood slowly, testing her body's limits, and moved to the table. Bread, cheese, dried fruit, a clay pitcher of water. Simple fare, but more than she'd seen in weeks. Her stomach growled traitorously. Eat, Cashin said. You need your strength, she did, tearing into the bread with shaking hands. It was only after she'd devoured half the meal that she realized he hadn't moved. Hadn't looked away. Aren't you going to eat? Something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. I don't require food as you do. Blood, she said, the word heavy between them. Double quotes, yes. Alara swallowed hard, setting down the cheese. The rogue said they would drain her. My daughter. That they'd make her last through winter. Cashin's expression darkened, his jaw tightening. Rogues are what happens when vampires abandon all law, all honor. They feed without consent, kill without purpose, and corrupt everything they touch. I am not a rogue. Then what are you? He was quiet for a long moment. I am what my kind calls an enforcer. One, maintain order between the vampire houses, ensure treaties are honored, and eliminate threats to the balance we've built over centuries. The rogues in your forest were a threat. They've been preying on humans under the guise of ancient tradition. But the old laws they claimed to follow forbid exactly what they were doing. So you kill them? The thought should have horrified her. It didn't. I gave them a chance to leave. Whether they take it remains to be seen. He shifted, and in the growing darkness, his eyes gleamed brighter. But understand this, I ended that tribute system tonight. Your village and any others paying blood debts to rogues are now under night court protection. There will be consequences for those who resist. Alara thought of the magistrate who'd condemned her daughter, the council who'd voted in agreement, her husband who lied. Good? Cashin's gaze sharpened. You want them punished. I want them to face what they've done. How many children did they give away before mine? How many families destroyed? Her voice cracked. My daughter almost died because my husband wanted to remarry someone with a larger dowry. Because I refused to simply disappear quietly when he grew bored of me. Tell me his name. The quiet command in his voice made her pause. Why? Because men who trade children's lives for convenience deserve to be reminded of their mortality. It was the way he said it, calm, certain, lethal, that made Alara realize what she'd walked into. This wasn't just shelter. This was power. Ancient, dangerous power that could reach back to her village and extract whatever justice she wanted. The temptation was dizzying. Marcus, she heard herself say. Marcus Thorne. Cashin nodded once. Consider it done. What will you do to him? Nothing permanent, but he will know fear. He will know what it feels like to be powerless. His cold eyes found hers across the darkening room. Is that acceptable? Alara thought of her daughter, crying in the leaves while a rogue reached for her with blackened claws. Yes, then rest. Tomorrow we'll discuss what happens next. He moved toward the door, and Alara surprised herself by speaking. Wait, will you? Will you stay close? I don't want to be alone right now. Cashin paused, his hand on the doorframe. For the first time, she saw something almost vulnerable cross his features. I'll be just outside. You're safe here, Alara. I promise you that. He left before she could ask how he knew her name. The door closed softly, and Alara was alone with her sleeping daughter and the gathering night. Outside, she heard nothing. No wind, no animals. Only the profound silence of stone and shadow. She should have been terrified instead. For the first time in months, she felt almost safe. Chapter 3. Nocturnal habits. 3 days passed in the mountain stronghold, and Alara began to notice things, the way Cashin never ate in her presence. Though he always ensured she had fresh meals, bread still warm, fruit perfectly ripe, meat expertly prepared by hands she never saw. The way he moved through the corridors without sound, appearing suddenly in doorways like he materialized from smoke. The way he avoided the few windows during daylight hours, keeping to the deeper chambers where torchlight flickered against ancient stone. Most unsettling was the way he never seemed to sleep. On the third night, Alara woke to feed her daughter and heard voices drifting through the stone walls. She wrapped herself in the heavy robe Cashin had provided and crept to the door, pressing her ear against the wood. Cannot shelter a human indefinitely. The voice was female, sharp with irritation. The other houses will question your judgment. The other houses can bring their questions to me directly. Cashin's voice was colder than Alara had heard it. She and the child are under my protection. That is final. She's a liability. Humans always are. They're fragile, short-lived, and they complicate everything they touch. Then perhaps you should return to House Saren and let me manage my own complications. Vivian. A pause. Then? You're getting attached. That's dangerous for someone in your position. I'm being decent. There's a difference, is there? You brought her into your private stronghold, Cashin. You haven't done that for anyone into centuries. People will talk. Let them talk. Footsteps approached the door and Alara scrambled back into bed, heart pounding. But the footsteps receded and eventually silence returned. She lay awake for hours after, her daughter sleeping peacefully in the cradle beside her, questions multiplying in her mind. The next morning, though morning was relative, in the windowless chamber Alara found Cashin, in what he called the library. It was a vast room carved from the mountain itself, shelves of books climbing toward a vaulted ceiling lost in shadow. He sat at a heavy oak desk, writing something in a leather-bound journal with a quill that looked centuries old. He didn't look up when she entered. You heard our conversation last night. It wasn't a question. Alara clutched her sleeping daughter closer. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, yet you did. He set down the quill with deliberate care. What do you want to know? Everything, she thought. But she chose her words carefully. Who was that woman? Vivian. An emissary from House Saren, one of the 5 great vampire houses that govern our kind. She was delivering messages from her mistress regarding political matters. He gestured to a chair across from him. Sit, you shouldn't be standing with those ribs. Alara sat, settling her daughter in her lap. The baby stirred but didn't wake. She said, I'm a liability. Vivian sees most things as liabilities. It's why she's good at her job. Cashin leaned back, studying Alara with those unnerving gold eyes. She's not entirely wrong, though. Housing a human in a vampire stronghold raises questions. Questions I'll need to answer eventually. Why did you bring us here, really? You could have just scared off those rogues and left us. I could have. He was quiet for a moment, his gaze distant. But I've seen what happens when vampires turn away from human suffering. I've spent 3 centuries enforcing laws meant to prevent exactly the kind of exploitation your village practiced. Walking away would have made me complicit. That's very noble. Alara didn't mean it to sound bitter, but it did. Cashin's expression shifted, something almost like pain flickering across his features. Don't mistake necessity for nobility. I've done things that would horrify you, Alara. Made choices that haunt me still. Offering you shelter doesn't absolve centuries of blood. The admission startled her. She'd expected coldness, distance, the inhuman detachment she'd always imagined vampires possessed. Instead, he sounded almost human, regretful. How old are you? She asked quietly. 347 years. Give or take a decade. I stopped counting precisely after the 1st century. The number was incomprehensible. And you've been alone here all that time? Not always. I've had companions, allies, people I protected or worked with. His jaw tightened. But humans die, Alara. They age and sicken and fade, and vampires endure. It's the fundamental tragedy of our existence. Her daughter shifted in her arms, making a small sound. Cashin's gaze dropped to the baby, and something in his expression softened. How often do you need to feed? Alara asked, surprising herself with her boldness. He looked back at her, assessing. Every few days, ideally. I can go longer if necessary, but it weakens me, makes me more susceptible to baser instincts. And you haven't fed since you found us, no. Because you're worried you might hurt us? Because I'm worried I might frighten you. He stood abruptly, moving to one of the bookshelves. Vampires can feed without killing, but it requires control, and it requires consent. both from the person offering blood and from the vampire accepting it. It's the first law of the night court, no force feeding, ever. Alara watched him pull a book from the shelf, his movements too controlled to careful. You're hungry now. I'm managing. What happens if you don't feed? Cassian was silent for a long moment, his back still to her. I become dangerous. Not immediately, but gradually. The hunger grows until rational thought becomes difficult, until the monster the rogues embody becomes harder to distinguish from what I am. Then you should feed. He turned sharply, eyes blazing gold in the dim light. I will not take blood from you. You're injured, exhausted, and under my protection. It would be a violation of everything I've sworn to uphold. I wasn't offering, Alara said, though part of her had been considering exactly that. I just meant, there must be others. Other sources, there are. He set the book down with deliberate care. I have arrangements in the nearest city. People who provide blood willingly in exchange for coin or protection or other services. I'll travel there tonight after you're asleep. You're leaving us? The question came out more vulnerable than she'd intended. Cassian's expression softened slightly. Only for a few hours. The stronghold is warded, no one can enter without my permission. You'll be safe. He moved back toward the desk, maintaining careful distance. But I need you to understand something, Alara. The world you've entered isn't simple. There are vampire houses with their own agendas, rogues who see humans as prey, and laws older than your village's entire history. You're caught in the middle of it now, whether you intended to be or not, because I accepted your help, because your village's tribute system connected them to something much larger. The rogues weren't acting alone, someone was organizing them, using human desperation to build a network outside house control. His voice dropped. That's what I'm really investigating, and it's why Vivian is concerned. If the other houses think I'm compromised by personal attachments, they'll remove me from the case. Alara looked down at her daughter, sleeping peacefully, unaware of the dangerous web they'd fallen into. What do we do? We survive, Cassian said simply, and we trust each other. Can you do that, Alara? Trust a vampire who should be your enemy. She thought of the rogue's red eyes and stained fangs, thought of her village's casual cruelty, thought of the man who'd saved her daughter without hesitation, who spoke of consent and honor, who looked at her baby with something achingly close to tenderness. Yes, she said. I think I can. Something shifted in Cassian's expression, relief. Perhaps, or something deeper. Good, because I'm going to need your help unraveling this mess. You know things about your village, about how they were contacted, how the tribute system worked. Information I can use. You want me to work with you? I want you to survive. If that means making you useful to my investigation, then yes. He met her gaze steadily. But understand, this isn't charity anymore. If you stay, you're choosing to enter this world. There's no going back to simple mortality after that. Alara looked around the library, at centuries of accumulated knowledge, at the vampire who should have terrified her but instead made her feel safer than her own husband ever had. I stopped being simple the moment my village tried to sacrifice my daughter, she said quietly. Show me what you need. Cassian smiled, then a real smile, small and unexpected. Tomorrow. Tonight, I feed. And you rest. He left her there among the books and shadows, and Alara realized she was no longer afraid of the dark. Chapter 4. Threads of Truth. Alara woke to find Cassian sitting in the chair beside her bed, watching the door with predatory stillness. What's wrong? She whispered, instinctively reaching for her daughter's cradle. Nothing immediate. His voice was quiet but tense. But we had visitors while I was gone. They didn't breach the wards, but they tested them. Probed for weaknesses. The rogues? More sophisticated than rogues. He turned to look at her, and she noticed the color had returned to his face, his skin less marble pale, his eyes brighter. He'd fed. Someone wants to know who I'm sheltering here. Alara sat up slowly, wincing as her ribs protested. Because of me? Because of what you represent. A human who escaped the tribute system, protected by a house enforcer. It complicates your operation. He stood, moving to the window. Dawn light was beginning to creep across the mountain peaks. I need you to tell me everything about how your village arranged the tribute. Who initiated contact with the rogues? How were the terms set? She wrapped the blanket around her shoulders, thinking back. It started before I was born. My grandmother used to tell stories about the first tribute, a girl of 7, taken into the forest and never seen again. The rogue sent a message afterward. 1 child every 7 years, or we take the entire village. And no one questioned this? No one sought help from the nearest city, the magistrate's office, anyone. The village is isolated. 3 days from the nearest town, surrounded by forests and mountains. We're farmers, bakers, craftsmen, not fighters. Alara's voice hardened. And after the first tribute, the rogues kept their word. 7 years of peace. Then another child. Another 7 years. It became tradition. Cashin's jaw tightened. Tradition built on terror, the council justified it, said it was sacrifice for the greater good. That one life every 7 years was better than everyone dying. She looked at her sleeping daughter. Until it was my child's turn. Then suddenly I saw it for what it was, cowardice. Easier to give up one baby than risk fighting back. Who delivered the children to the forest? Usually the parents. Sometimes the village priest. If the parents refused, Alara's stomach churned at the memory. They perform a ceremony at sunset, blessing the child before sending them to the clearing, making it holy somehow, as if that absolved them. Cashin crossed the room and knelt beside her chair, bringing himself to a level. The gesture was unexpectedly gentle. Did anyone ever come to your village from outside? Travelers, merchants, anyone who seemed interested in the tribute system? Alara frowned, trying to remember. There was a man. About a year ago. He came through selling tonics and remedies. Stayed for 3 days, asked a lot of questions about our traditions. Describe him: tall, dark hair, very pale. But I thought he was just sickly. She paused, realization dawning. He was vampire, wasn't he? Likely. Did he speak with the council? I don't know. I saw him talking with Marcus, my husband, in the tavern one night. They seemed friendly. Her hands clenched in her lap. Could Marcus have known? Could he have planned this? It's possible. If someone was organizing these tribute systems across multiple villages, they'd need local collaborators, people willing to identify suitable candidates. Cashin's voice was carefully neutral, but his eyes burned with barely contained rage. Did your husband have debts? Ambitions? Anything that might make him vulnerable to manipulation? He wanted to be magistrate. The position was coming open next year, and he was campaigning for it. Alara felt sick. He needed the current magistrate's endorsement, and the magistrate's daughter had just returned from the city, widowed and wealthy. So he needed Yugon in the magistrate's favor. Delivering the tribute child would accomplish both. He sold her daughter for a political position. The words felt like ash in her mouth. Cashin reached out, hesitated, then gently covered her hand with his. His skin was cool but not unpleasant. I'm sorry. Humans can be more monstrous than any vampire I've known. The touch steadied her. Alara took a shaking breath. What do we do now? Now, I send word to the Night Court. If there's an organized network recruiting humans to sacrifice children, it's bigger than rogue activity. It's a conspiracy. He stood, but kept his hand on hers a moment longer. And it means keeping you hidden here is no longer just protection, it's strategy. You're a witness. Proof that the system exists. They'll come for me. They'll try. His voice held absolute certainty. They'll fail. A cry from the cradle interrupted them. Alara's daughter had woken, hungry and fussing. She lifted the baby, cradling her close, and began to nurse. Cashin turned away immediately, giving them privacy. You don't have to leave, Alara said quietly. It's proper. You've been nothing but proper since we arrived. You can stay. She adjusted the blanket to maintain modesty. Besides, I have questions too. He turned back slowly, leaning against the wall with careful distance. What do you want to know? Everything. She looked at him, this ancient creature who'd saved them, sheltered them, who was planning some kind of war on their behalf. You said you've done things that haunt you? What did you mean? Cashin was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he spoke, his voice was raw. I was turned during a war, made into a vampire against my will by someone who thought I'd be useful as a weapon. For the first 50 years, I was exactly what they wanted. I killed without question, fed without consent, became the monster every human nightmare warns about. Alara's breath caught, but she didn't look away. It wasn't until I encountered a human, a woman not unlike you, actually, trying to protect her family from vampire predation, that I began to remember what I'd been. What I lost. His gold eyes were distant, lost in memory. She could have killed me. I was weakened, wounded from a fight with a rival house. Instead, she hid me, nursed me back to strength. And when I was recovered, she asked me one question. What kind of monster do you want to be? What did you tell her? I didn't have an answer. So she said, then figure it out before you hurt anyone else who doesn't deserve it. A ghost of a smile. She was fierce. Terrifying, actually. I've spent 3 centuries trying to honor that challenge. What happened to her? She lived a full life, had children, grandchildren. I watched from a distance, made sure she was safe. His voice softened. She died at 83, surrounded by family, having never told anyone she'd once saved a vampire's life, or his soul. Alara felt tears prick her eyes. She sounds remarkable. She was. And she taught me that the measure of what we are isn't what we've done, but what we choose to do with the time we're given. He looked at Alara directly. You made a choice in that clearing. You could have run, left the baby, saved yourself. You didn't. She's my daughter, and that's why you're still here. That's why I'll fight anyone who tries to take either of you. He pushed off from the wall. Now rest. I need to send messages, strengthen the wards, and prepare for what's coming. What is coming? Cassian paused at the door. The truth. And everyone who wants it buried. He left, and Alara sat in the growing daylight, her daughter nursing peacefully, her mind spinning with revelations. She was caught in something vast and dangerous, protected by a vampire who carried centuries of guilt and determination in equal measure. But for the first time since her husband's betrayal, she didn't feel helpless. She felt like she had a purpose, and an ally who understood what it meant to fight for redemption outside. She heard Cassian moving through the stronghold, his footsteps purposeful, preparing for war, and Alara realized she was preparing too. Chapter 5. The rival house of attack came on the 7th night. Alara woke to the sound of shattering glass and Cassian's roar echoing through the stone corridors. She bolted upright, scooping her daughter from the cradle, and pressed herself against the far wall as the door to her chamber burst open. But it wasn't an enemy, it was Cassian, moving faster than her eyes could track. He slammed the door shut behind him and threw the iron bolt. His face was spattered with something dark and his eyes blazed like twin suns. Stay here. Do not open this door for anyone but me. His voice was command, not request. What's happening? House Corvin. They sent a hunting party. He moved to the window, and she saw his hands were shaking not with fear, but with barely restrained violence. They're testing my defenses, seeing if you're worth the political complications. How many? 6. I've eliminated 2. He turned back to her, and for the first time, she saw the predator beneath the gentleman. His fangs were extended, sharp as broken glass. They're trained fighters, Alara, court assassins. This isn't rogues stumbling through the forest. A crash echoed from somewhere deeper in the stronghold. Cassian's head snapped toward the sound, and he moved to the door. Remember, no one but me. Then he was gone, the door slamming shut behind him. Alara stood frozen, her daughter whimpering against her chest. She could hear sounds now, impacts, snarls, something that might have been words in a language she didn't recognize. The clash of combat in the darkness beyond her door. She looked around frantically. The room had no other exits, no weapons, nothing but furniture and her daughter's cradle. If someone breached that door, she had no way to defend them. Her gaze fell on the fireplace. The poker was iron, heavy and solid. She grabbed it with her free hand, positioned herself behind the door and waited. The sounds of fighting intensified. She heard Cassian's voice, cold and lethal. You violated sanctuary. House Corvin will answer for this, a female voice responded. Amused despite the violence, you violated protocol when you sheltered the human. The Night Court wants answers, enforcer. We're here to collect them, over my corpse. That can be arranged. The clash resumed, closer now. Alara's heart hammered against her ribs. Her daughter had begun to cry in earnest, and she bounced her gently, whispering desperate reassurances she didn't believe. Then silence, absolute. Suffocating silence. Alara gripped the poker tighter, her breath coming in shallow gasps. Footsteps approached her door, slow, deliberate. A shadow passed beneath the gap at the bottom. Alara, Cassian's voice, but strained. It's me. I'm coming in. She stepped back as the bolt slid open. The door swung inward, revealing Cassian. He was wounded, a deep gash across his chest, his left arm hanging at an odd angle. Dark blood stained his clothes, and she couldn't tell how much was his. You're hurt, she breathed. I'll heal. He stumbled slightly, catching himself against the doorframe. But we need to move. Now, the stronghold is compromised. What about the others? Dead or fled? But they sent word before I could stop them. House Corvin knows you're here. They'll send more. He pushed away from the doorframe, swaying. There's a tunnel system beneath the stronghold. Old escape routes. We can reach the forest before dawn. Alara grabbed a cloak, wrapping it around herself and her daughter. You can barely stand, I'll manage. But even as he said it, he stumbled again. The wound on his chest wasn't closing, something was wrong. She caught his good arm, steadying him. What did they do to you? Silver blade. Slow's healing, his breath was labored. I'm fine. You're not fine. She looked at the wound, saw the burned edges where metal had met supernatural flesh. How do I help? You can't, I need blood to heal. And there's no time, take mine. Cassian's head snapped up, eyes wide. Absolutely not. You said you'd die without blood. That the wound won't close. Alara shifted her daughter to one arm, holding the baby against her shoulder. With her free hand, she pulled aside her cloak, exposing her neck. So take it. Enough to heal. Enough to get us out of here. I could kill you. I'm wounded, weak in my control isn't. I trust you. The words surprised her with their certainty. You saved my daughter. You've protected us. You've been nothing but honorable. She stepped closer. So save yourself. Please. Cassian stared at her, something like anguish crossing his features. This isn't how it should be. You should have time to consider, to understand what you're offering. We don't have time. Another crash echoed from the depths of the stronghold. They're still coming, aren't they? He closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, they were filled with reluctance and desperate need in equal measure. If I take too much, you won't. She tilted her head, exposing the vulnerable line of her throat. Her daughter had quieted, as if sensing the gravity of the moment. I know you won't. Cassian moved closer with visible reluctance. His hand came up to steady her shoulder, touch gentle despite his injuries. This will hurt. I'm sorry, it's all right. He leaned in, and she felt his breath against her skin cool, trembling with restraint. Then the sharp, sudden pressure of fangs piercing flesh. Alara gasped, her hand flying up to grip his shoulder. It did hurt a bright, fierce pain that radiated from her neck. But beneath the pain was something else, warmth spreading through her veins. A strange, dizzying intimacy, as if some barrier between them had dissolved. She could feel his desperation, his hunger, but also his iron control. He took what he needed with careful precision, never more than she could spare. His hand on her shoulder tightened briefly, then gentled when he pulled back. His eyes had changed, less frantic, more focused. The wound on his chest was already beginning to close, flesh knitting together with supernatural speed. Thank you, he whispered, his voice hoarse. Alara swayed, suddenly lightheaded. He caught her immediately, supporting her weight. I took too much, I'm fine. Just dizzy, she managed a weak smile. Did it help? More than you know. He was already moving, guiding her toward the door with one arm around her waist. But we need to go. Now. They moved through the stronghold's corridors, Cassian leading her through passages she'd never seen. Behind them, she heard voices, more attackers searching the complex. Cassian's pace was steady now, his injuries visibly healing as they walked. Why does House Corvin want me? Alara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Because you're proof. Evidence that the tribute system exists, that it's being coordinated. They reached a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. And because taking you from me is a political victory. Shows that I can be compromised, can you? He looked at her, something unreadable in his ancient eyes. Apparently so. They descended into the tunnel system, rough-hewn passages that smelled of earth and stone. Cassian produced a torch from somewhere, its light casting dancing shadows on the walls. Where are we going? Alara asked, to someone who owes me a favor. Another vampire, but one who has no love for House Corvin. He glanced back at her. Can you walk? We have miles to cover before dawn. I can walk. She clutched her daughter tighter. As long as we're together. Something shifted in Cassian's expression, surprise perhaps. Or something deeper. Together, he repeated softly. Yes, that's what we are now. They moved deeper into the darkness, leaving the compromised stronghold behind. Alara's neck throbbed where he fed, but she didn't regret it. Couldn't regret it. She crossed a line tonight, offered blood willingly, bound herself to him in ways she didn't fully understand. But as they emerged from the tunnel into the pre-dawn forest, Cassian's hand steady on her arm, she realized she'd make the same choice again. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Chapter 6, Blood Oaths and Ancient Lost. They reached the safe house. Just as dawn broke over the mountains. It wasn't what Alara expected. Instead of another fortress, Cassian led her to a small cottage nestled in a valley. Surrounded by ancient oaks, and protected by wards she could almost feel humming in the air. Smoke rose from the chimney, and warm light glowed in the windows. Who lives here? She asked, exhausted from hours of walking. An old friend. Someone who left house politics behind centuries ago. Cassian knocked 3 times, paused. Then twice more, some kind of code. The door opened to reveal a woman who looked perhaps 40, with silver-streaked dark hair, and eyes the color of amber. She took one look at Cassian's blood-stained clothes and Alara's pale face, and stepped aside. Inside, quickly, her voice was warm but urgent. You've brought trouble, Cassian. When don't I? He ushered Alara through the door, his hand protective at her back. The cottage interior was cozy, far more homelike than Cassian's stronghold. Books lined the walls, herbs hung drying from the rafters, and a fire crackled in the hearth. The woman closed the door and immediately began tracing symbols in the air, reinforcing the wards. This is Isolde, Cassian said to Alara. She was once a court scholar. Now she's the wisest person I know. Isolde turned, her amber eyes studying Alara with unsettling intensity. And this is a human who's turned the houses upside down. The one who survived the tribute clearing. Her name is Alara, Cassian said quietly. And her daughter is asleep. Poor thing. Isolde's expression softened as she looked at the baby. Sit, both of you. You look half dead, and you? She pointed at Cassian, smell like silver poisoning. They sat at a worn wooden table while Isolde prepared tea. Alara cradled her daughter, watching the two vampires move around each other with the ease of long familiarity. House Corvin attacked the stronghold, Cassian said. 6 assassins. They knew exactly where to strike. Isolde set down teacups with deliberate care. Someone on the Night Court gave them intelligence. You realize what that means? That the corruption goes higher than I thought. Cassian's jaw tightened. The tribute system isn't just rogue activity. It's sanctioned, or at least protected by someone powerful enough to shield it from investigation. Isolde sat across from them, her gaze moving between Cassian and Alara. Tell me everything. Cassian recounted the attack while Alara sipped tea that tasted of chamomile and something else, something that eased her exhaustion and cleared her mind. When he finished, Isolde was silent for a long moment. You fed from her, she said finally. Not a question. Alara's hand went instinctively to her neck. Where the small punctures still ached beneath the surface, I had no choice. The silver, I'm not criticizing. I'm observing. Isolde's amber eyes fixed on Alara. Did he explain what it means? A vampire feeding from a human with permission? Alara shook her head slowly. Isolde sighed. Of course he didn't, Cassian. You absolute fool. There was no time for lectures on vampire customs, he said defensively. Then I'll give one now. Isolde turned fully to Alara. When a vampire feeds from a willing human, it creates what we call a resonance, a connection. The more powerful the vampire, the stronger the bond. And Cassian is one of the most powerful vampires alive. Alara's stomach tightened. What kind of connection? It varies. At minimum, he can sense your emotional state: fear, pain, joy. Strong emotions will reach him even at a distance. At maximum, Isolde hesitated. At maximum, it becomes something closer to what humans call a soul bond. To beings connected across the boundary between life and death. That's an exaggeration. Cassian said sharply, is it? When's the last time you fed from someone and felt anything beyond physical sustenance? Isolde's voice was gentle but relentless. I saw how you looked at her when you came through that door, Cassian. Like she was the only solid thing in a collapsing world. Alara looked at Cassian. Saw the tension in his shoulders, the way he wouldn't quite meet her eyes. Is it true? Can you feel what I'm feeling? He was quiet for a moment. Yes, since I fed, I can sense echoes your exhaustion. Your fear for your daughter. Your determination. He finally looked at her. It will fade over time. As long as I don't feed from you again. And if you do, the bond deepens. Becomes harder to break. His voice was carefully neutral. Which is why I won't. What happened tonight was necessity, not choice. Something in his tone stung more than it should have. Alara looked away, focusing on her sleeping daughter. I understand. Isolde made a sound of frustration. You're both being idiots. The bond isn't a curse, Cassian. It's a tool. Right now, every vampire in 3 territories is hunting for this woman and her child. But if you maintain the resonance, you can protect her more effectively. Know if she's in danger before the threat arrives, and make her a permanent target. Cassian countered. If the other houses discover I've formed a blood bond with a human witness, they'll use her against me. They're already using her against you. Isolde stood, moving to a bookshelf. The moment you brought her to your stronghold, you declared her important. The bond is just making that declaration more tangible. She pulled down a heavy tome, laying it on the table. The cover was embossed with symbols Alara couldn't read. This is the Codex of Night, the foundational laws of vampire society, written when the first houses formed over 2,000 years ago. Isolde flipped through pages until she found what she was looking for. Here, the law of sanctuary. Any vampire may claim protection over a human who has been wronged by our kind. Such protection is absolute and cannot be challenged except by direct petition. To the assembled Night Court, they'll never grant a hearing, Cassian said. They will if you invoke the Blood Witness Clause. Isolde tapped the page. Alara isn't just under your protection, she's evidence of systematic abuse. If you formally declare her a blood witness, the court must hear her testimony. Cassian leaned forward, reading intently. I'd have to claim her before the assembled houses. Make the bond official, yes, and it would paint an even larger target on both your backs. Isolde looked at Alara. But it would also give you legal standing. No house could touch you without facing charges of obstructing justice. Alara's mind raced. What would it require? This formal claim? A blood oath, witnessed and recorded. Cassian would swear to protect you with his life, and you would swear to testify truthfully before the court. Isolde's expression was grave. It's binding, Alara, not something to enter into lightly. How is it different from what we already have? What you have now isn't formal a rescue, a debt of gratitude. A blood oath is law. It means Cassian becomes legally responsible for your actions, and you become part of his house in everything but name. Isolde glanced at Cassian. It's essentially what humans would call a marriage contract without the romantic expectations. Alara felt heat rise to her cheeks. Cassian had gone very still beside her. There has to be another way, he said. There isn't not. If you want to protect her from House Corvin and whoever's orchestrating these tributes, Isolde closed the book gently. You've already fed from her. You've already formed the resonance. Making it official just gives you the legal framework to defend what you've already claimed. I didn't claim her. Didn't you? Isolde's amber eyes were knowing. You brought her into your stronghold. Fought 6 assassins to protect her. Fed from her veins when you were dying. Those are the actions of a vampire who's claimed someone, whether you'll admit it or not. Cassian stood abruptly, moving to the window. Dawn light was streaming through the glass, but he stood just outside its reach. Staring into the forest beyond, Alara looked down at her daughter, then at the ancient book on the table. A blood oath. Legal protection. A way to stand before the Night Court and demand justice for all the children her village had sacrificed. How long do we have to decide? She asked quietly. Ours, maybe? Once House Corvin realizes you escaped, they'll bring a formal complaint before the court. If Cassian hasn't claimed you as blood witness by then, you'll be classified as an unprotected human fair game for any house that wants information from you. And they wouldn't be gentle in their questioning, Cassian added. His voice tight. Alara stood, walked to where he stood by the window. Her daughter stirred but didn't wake. What do you want to do? He turned to look at her, and she saw conflict written in every line of his face. I want you to be safe. I want your daughter to grow up without fear of being hunted. I want to destroy the people who built this system of sacrifice and suffering. Then let's do it. The blood oath. Make me your witness. You don't understand what you're agreeing to. I understand enough. She met his gold eyes steadily. I understand that you're the only person who's tried to help us. That you've risked your life in position for a human you barely know. That whatever bond we have, willing or not, it's already saved both our lives. Cassian searched her face. This will change everything, Alara. You won't be able to return to normal human life. You'll be part of vampire politics, possibly for the rest of your days. My normal life ended when my husband tried to sacrifice our daughter. Her voice was firm. I'm choosing a new one. With you. Something flickered in his expression. Hope, maybe, or fear. Possibly both. He looked to Isolde. You can perform the ceremony. Chapter 7, The Blood Oath. Alara woke to twilight and the sound of chanting. She found Cassian and Isolde in the cottage's main room, which had been transformed. The furniture had been pushed against the walls and a circle of salt traced the floorboards. Candles burned at cardinal points, their flames unnaturally still despite the draft from the chimney. In the center lay an ornate dagger, its blade inscribed with symbols that seemed to shift in the flickering light. You're awake, Isolde said, not turning from where she was arranging ritual components. Good, we begin soon. Alara's daughter was sleeping peacefully in a cradle near the hearth, watched over by some invisible ward that made the air shimmer around her. Cassian stood at the circle's edge, dressed in formal black, a tailored coat that looked centuries old, embroidered with silver thread and patterns that hurt to look at directly. He looked like what he was, ancient, powerful, dangerous, a creature from another world entirely. Are you certain about this? He asked as she approached. Once the oath is sworn, there's no breaking it. Not without severe consequences for both of us. Alara thought of her village, of Marcus's lies, of the rogues reaching for her daughter with blackened claws. I'm certain. Isolde gestured for them to enter the circle. Cassian on the north point, Alara on the south. The dagger remains between you. They took their positions. The moment Alara stepped across the salt line, she felt something shift, as if she'd moved from the ordinary world into a space between spaces. The air thickened, charged with power that made her skin prickle. The blood oath is one of our oldest ceremonies, Isolde began, her voice taking on a formal cadence. It binds vampire to human, protector to protected, in a covenant recognized by all houses and enforced by the Night Court itself. What is sworn here cannot be unsworn. What is promised here cannot be broken. Do you both enter willingly? I do, Cassian said. I do. Alara echoed, her voice steadier than she felt. Isolde picked up the dagger, holding it reverently. Cassian of House Nox, enforcer of the Night Court, state your oath. Cassian's gold eyes found Alara's across the circle. When he spoke, his voice resonated with power that made the candle flames flare. I, Cassian of House Nox, do swear by blood and bone, by night eternal and the old laws, to protect Alara and her bloodline from all harm. I claim her as blood witness under the law of sanctuary. Her enemies are my enemies. Her safety is my purpose. Until death claims one of us or she releases me from this bond, I am hers to command in all matters of protection and justice. The words settled into the air like physical weight. Alara felt them wrap around her, binding and protective in equal measure. Isolde turned to her. Alara, mortal woman, state your oath. Alara took a breath. They practiced this earlier, but now, with power thrumming through the circle and Cashin's ancient gaze upon her, the words felt momentous. I, Alara, do swear by blood and truth, by the life I've lived and the daughter I protect, to stand witness before the night court. I will testify honestly about the tribute system and those who profit from it. I accept Cashin's protection and acknowledge the bond between us. Until justice is served or death takes me, I am bound to this purpose. Then let blood seal what words have sworn. Isolde offered the dagger first to Cashin. He took it without hesitation, drawing the blade across his palm. Dark blood welled immediately, not red like human blood, but deeper, almost black in the candlelight. He held his hand over the circle center, letting 3 drops fall to the floorboards. Then Isolde offered the dagger to Alara. Her hand trembled slightly as she took it. The blade was cold, heavier than it looked. She pressed it to her palm, not as deeply as Cashin had, but enough to draw blood. Her crimson drops fell beside his darker ones, and where they met, something sparked. Light flared between them, brilliant and blinding. Alara gasped as power surged through her body, far and overwhelming, like touching lightning. She felt Cashin's presence flooding her awareness, his strength, his determination, his carefully controlled fear for her safety. And beneath it all, something else. Something he'd been hiding even from himself. Loneliness, centuries of it, bone deep and aching. The light faded, leaving them both breathing hard. The blood on the floor had vanished, absorbed into the wood, and Alara could feel something fundamental had changed. She was aware of Cashin in a way she hadn't been before, could sense him standing across from her, could feel the steady, inhuman rhythm of his heart. It's done, Isolde said quietly. The oath is sealed and recorded. The night court will know by dawn. Cashin stepped out of the circle, and immediately reached for Alara as her knees buckled. Easy, the bond takes adjustment. I can feel you, she whispered. Inside my head. Not thoughts, but presence, I know. I feel you too. His hand on her arm was steadying. It will settle. Become background instead of overwhelming. Isolde was already cleaning up, breaking the circle with practiced efficiency. You should both eat. The oath takes energy from both parties. Cashin, you'll need to feed again soon. The ceremony draws on blood power. Alara looked at him, saw the slight tension around his eyes that suggested hunger. From me? No. I can manage until. It strengthens the bond, doesn't it? If you feed from me regularly? She remembered Isolde's words from earlier. Makes it easier for you to sense danger, yes, but then do it. If it keeps us safer, if it helps protect my daughter, then it's worth it. Cashin studied her face. You're asking me to tie you closer to a vampire's existence, to make you dependent on this bond. I'm asking you to use every tool we have. She touched the mark on her neck where he fed before. I trust you, Cashin. Maybe that's foolish, but I do. Something shifted in his expression, gratitude and guilt and longing tangled together. Not here. Not with an audience, Isolde snorted. I'll check on the baby. You to figure out your complicated feelings. She paused at the bedroom door. But Cashin, don't make her wait too long. House Corvin will move against you at the court by tomorrow night. You'll need to be at full strength. She disappeared into the bedroom, leaving them alone in the candlelit room. Cashin gestured to the sofa near the hearth. Sit please. Alara sat and he settled beside her, close but not touching. The bond between them hummed with tension, with unspoken things. I need you to understand something, he said quietly. Every time I feed from you, the bond grows stronger. Eventually, it becomes difficult to tell where I end and you begin. Some vampires and their bonded humans reach a point where separation causes physical pain. Is that what you're afraid of? That we'll become too connected? I'm afraid I'll trap you in a half-life, neither fully human nor vampire, bound to someone who'll outlive you by centuries. His voice was raw. I've watched humans I cared about age and die. Alara, it never gets easier. So you'd rather keep distance? Keep me at arm's length even though the bond is already formed? I'd rather give you every choice I can. He turned to face her fully. If I feed from you regularly, you'll begin to change. Not into a vampire that requires a different ritual, but into something between. You'll heal faster, age slower, become more attuned to the night. Alara's heart raced. How much slower? It varies. Some bonded humans live twice their natural span. Some 3 times. One I knew of survived for centuries before she chose to end the bond and live out her remaining mortal years. The implications were staggering. I could watch my daughter grow up, grow old, have children of her own, yes. You could also watch everyone you've ever known from your mortal life die while you remain. His gold eyes were filled with old pain. It's not a gift, Alara. It's a burden. She thought of her village, of Marcus, of the life she'd lost. None of it felt worth mourning. But her daughter, would she be affected? The bond's influence? No. It only extends to the one who swears the oath. Your daughter will live a normal human life, unless she chooses otherwise when she's grown. Alara looked toward the bedroom where her daughter slept, then back at Cassian. Then I choose to strengthen it, to let you flee from me, to accept whatever changes come. Because my daughter deserves a mother who'll be there for her entire life. And because she hesitated, then pushed forward. Because I'm not afraid of you, Cassian. I'm only afraid of losing what we've built. His breath caught in unconscious. Human gesture from a creature who didn't need to breathe. What we've built, he repeated softly. In a week. With blood and necessity and in trust, she finished. In partnership. And something that feels like the beginning of, she couldn't finish. Didn't know how to name what was growing between them. Cassian reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her face with his hand. His touch was gentle, reverent. You undo me, he whispered. 3 centuries of careful distance, and you walk into my life with a baby in your arms and demolish every wall I built. Is that bad? I don't know. Ask me in another century, a ghost of a smile. But for now, he leaned in and she felt his cool breath against her neck. For now, I'll accept what you're offering. And I'll try to be worthy of it. His fangs pierced skin with practiced gentleness. And Alara gasped at the rush of sensation, not just pain, but connection. Through the bond, she felt his hunger satisfied, his strength renewed. Felt his fierce protectiveness toward her and her daughter. Felt something deeper that he still wouldn't name. Chapter 8. The Sigurði came in the hour before dawn. Alara woke to Cassian's hand over her mouth, and his urgent whisper, stay silent. They're here, she nodded, and he removed his hand. Through the bond, she could feel his razor-sharp focus, the predatory readiness thrumming through him. He moved to the window, peering through a gap in the curtains. How many? Isolde appeared in the doorway, already dressed, a wicked-looking blade in her hand. At least a dozen. House Corvin brought reinforcements. Cassian's voice was grim. They're surrounding the cottage. Professional formation, they've done sieges before. Alara clutched her daughter, who'd begun to fuss, sensing the tension. What do we do? The wards will hold for a time, but not indefinitely. Not against this many. Isolde moved to the table, pulling back a rug to reveal a trapdoor. There's a root cellar. It connects to a tunnel that leads half a mile into the forest. They'll be watching for escape routes, Cassian said, which is why you're not escaping. Isolde looked at him steadily. You're going to hold them here while I get Alara and the baby out, no. Cassian turned from the window. I'm not letting you face them alone. You're the target, you fool. They want the blood witness and the enforcer who claimed her. If I create a diversion, lead them away from the tunnel exit, Alara has a chance. A tremendous crash shook the cottage. The wards flared visible for a moment, silver blue light coating the walls then dimmed. One of the windows shattered inward and a voice called from outside, Enforcer Cassian. We come under authority of House Corvin and the Night Court. Surrender the human witness, and we'll allow you to petition for mercy. Cassian's lip curled. They're lying. House Corvin doesn't negotiate. Another impact. The wards flickered dangerously. Alara could see shapes moving in the darkness outside, too many to coordinate it. Go. Cassian said to Isolde. Take them through the tunnel. I'll buy you time. Cassian. Alara started. He crossed to her in 2 strides, gripping her shoulders. Through the bond, she felt his desperate determination. Listen to me. Follow Isolde. There's a safe house 3 miles north. She knows the way. Wait for me there. What if you don't come? I will. His gold eyes blazed. The oath binds me to protect you. I'll tear through them all if I have to. But I will come for you. He kissed her forehead quick. Fierce then was gone, moving toward the door with inhuman speed. Isolde grabbed Alara's arm. Now, before he engages them. They descended into the root cellar as the sounds of violence erupted above. Alara heard Cassian's roar, the crash of bodies, screams both human and vampire. Her daughter wailed and Alara pressed the baby close, whispering desperate reassurances. The tunnel was narrow, barely wide enough for one person. Isolde led with a glowing orb of light cupped in her palm, magic Alara didn't understand. Behind them, the sounds of battle grew muffled by earth and distance. He's strong, Isolde said as they hurried through the darkness. One of the strongest vampires I've known. But 12 trained fighters, he'll survive. He has to. Alara refused to consider the alternative. Through the bond, she could still feel him rage and power and grim determination. Alive. Fighting. They'd gone perhaps a quarter mile when Alara felt it. A spike of pain through the bond that made her gasp and stumble. He's hurt, she breathed. Isolde caught her. Keep moving. The best thing you can do for him is survive. They emerged from the tunnel into a ravine thick with underbrush. Dawn was beginning to gray the eastern sky. Isolde extinguished her light and listened intently. Someone's coming, she whispered. From the north, fast, a figure dropped from the trees, a vampire male, with cold eyes and blood-stained armor bearing House Corvin's crest. He smiled when he saw them, the witness and a traitor. Lord Corvin will be pleased. Isolde pushed Alara behind her. Run, north, don't stop. I'm not leaving you, you have the baby. Go. Isolde launched herself at the vampire, blade flashing. Alara ran. Her daughter screamed against her chest and guilt tore at her with every step. But she ran. Behind her, she heard the clash of combat, Isolde's snarl of effort. Through the bond, she felt Cassion's distant agony. His fury that she was in danger. She burst through a thicket and nearly collided with another vampire. This one was female. Young-looking, with Corvin's crest on her cloak. She grabbed Alara's arm with crushing strength. Gotcha! Alara did the only thing she could think of. She bit down hard on the vampire's hand, tasting bitter blood, and when the creature jerked back in surprise, Alara swung the only weapon she had. Her daughter's iron cradle, which she grabbed from the cottage. The iron connected with the vampire's temple, and she shrieked, stumbling back. Iron poisonous to vampires, just like silver. Alara hit her again and again, until the vampire fell. Then she ran harder. The safe house appeared through the trees, a small stone building that looked abandoned. Alara threw herself against the door and found it unlocked. Inside was basic shelter, a bed, supplies. Wards that activated the moment she crossed the threshold. She collapsed against the wall, her daughter crying inconsolably. Through the bond, she reached for Cassin. At first, nothing. Then I'm coming. Hold on, his presence was weakened but determined. She felt pain radiating from multiple wounds, felt his exhaustion, but also his absolute refusal to stop. In our past, then too. Alara fed her daughter, changed her, walked the small room in endless circles. Dawn had fully broken, which meant Cassion would be even more vulnerable if he was still fighting. Please, she thought toward the bond. Please be alive, still here, came the faint response. Almost there, when the door finally opened, Alara's heart ceased, but it was Cassion who entered. Not an enemy. He was covered in blood, his left arm hanging useless, a deep gash across his face. But he was alive, Isolde. Alara asked, alive. Winded, she led most of them away, gave me an opening. He closed the door, then collapsed to his knees. I killed 4. Injured enough others that they retreated. But they'll regroup. Alara set her daughter down carefully and went to him. You need blood, I need to make sure you're safe first. But his voice was fading. I am safe. You made sure of that. She knelt beside him, tilting her head. Now feed. Before you lose consciousness. Took too much too recently, Cassion. She grabbed his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. You saved us, again. Now let me save you. Through the bond, she felt his resistance crumble. He pulled her close, his fangs finding her neck with desperate need. This feeding was different, turgent, raw, without the control he'd shown before. She felt her strength drain rapidly, felt the world tilt and blur. But she also felt him healing. Felt his wounds closing, his power returning. Felt his gratitude and guilt and something fiercer he still wouldn't name. When he finally pulled back, she was lightheaded, barely conscious. He caught her before she fell, lifting her onto the bed with surprising gentleness. You gave too much, he said, his voice rough with emotion. You needed it, she smiled weakly. We're even now. You saved me. I've saved you, Alara. His hand cupped her face. What you did back there, fighting that vampire, that was incredibly brave and incredibly foolish. I protected my daughter. Like you protected me. Her eyes were closing despite her efforts. That's what we do. We protect each other. Yes, he whispered. That's what we do. She felt him settle beside her on the bed, his cool body a strange comfort. Through the bond, his presence wrapped around her, protective, possessive, devoted. When I wake up, she murmured, we plan. Figure out how to stop House Corvin. How to get to the night court. When you wake up, he agreed. For now, rest. You've earned it. Her daughter had quieted, sleeping in the cradle Alara had used as a weapon. The morning light was soft through the shuttered windows, and for the first time since the siege began, Alara felt safe. Cassion's fingers threaded through her hair, gentle as moonlight. I've never met anyone like you, he said, so quietly she almost missed it. Mortal, fragile, and absolutely fearless. Not fearless, she corrected, already drifting. Just determined not to lose what matters, and what matters. She managed to open her eyes one last time, met his goal gaze. This us, whatever we're becoming, his breath caught. Then, so softly, sleep, brave one. I'll watch over you both, and she did. Safe in the knowledge that the monster who'd saved them was becoming something else entirely. Something that felt remarkably like home. Chapter 9, Nights of Teaching. 3 days passed in the safe house, and the world outside grew quiet to quiet. Cassion spent the daylight hours recovering, his wounds healing with supernatural speed now that he'd fed properly. Alara slept more than she intended, her body depleted from giving blood twice in such short succession. But each time she woke, Cassion was there watching over her and her daughter with a vigilance that never wavered. On the Fourth night. Isolde arrived. She was limping, one arm bound in a sling, but alive. Cassian embraced her briefly, relief evident in the gesture. House Corvin has withdrawn, Isolde reported, accepting a cup of tea from Alara. But they've filed formal charges with the Night Court. They're claiming you kidnapped a human witness to prevent her from testifying about rogue activity in their territory. Their territory. Cassian's voice was dangerously soft. The tribute clearing was nowhere near Corvin lands. They're claiming jurisdiction through ancient treaties. It's a legal fiction, but it gives them standing. Isolde winced as she shifted position. The Night Court has summoned you to formal hearing. 7 days from now, at the court's central chamber in Ravenmoor. 7 days, Alara repeated. Is that enough time to prepare? It has to be. Cassian began pacing, a caged predator working through strategy. We'll need documentation. Records of the tribute system. Testimony from others who've been affected. I can gather evidence, Isolde said. There were other villages that practiced similar tributes. If we can prove this was organized across multiple territories, then we prove conspiracy. Someone coordinating these tribute systems, using them to build power outside house oversight. Cassian stopped pacing, turned to Alara. You'll have to testify before the assembled houses. Stand in a chamber full of vampires and recount everything that happened. The thought terrified her, but she met his gaze steadily. I can do it. They'll question you relentlessly. Try to find inconsistencies, make you seem unreliable. His expression was grave. And they'll ask about the bond between us. Try to suggest you're under my influence, speaking only what I've told you to say. Then we need to make sure my testimony is unshakable. Alara looked at Isolde. You said there are rules to vampire society. Laws and customs. I need to learn them. Understand how the court works. What they'll expect. Isolde smiled. Now you're thinking like a survivor, yes? We teach you everything we can in 7 days. And so the lessons began. Each night, after her daughter was fed and sleeping, Alara sat with Cassian and Isolde while they explained the intricate web of vampire politics. There were 5 great houses. Cassian began on the first night, spreading a map across the table. Nox, my house, controls the northern territories. We value order, justice, and the enforcement of old laws. Saren, Isolde's former house, governs the eastern forests. Are scholars, keepers of history. Corvin holds the western mountains and prides itself on military strength. Thriss controls the southern cities and handles trade. And Valdis rules the central territories, including Ravenmoor, where the court meets. House Valdis is neutral, Isolde added. They host the court but rarely take sides in disputes. Their power comes from that neutrality. Alara studied the map. Which houses would be sympathetic to our case? Saren, likely. They respect documentation and evidence. Thriss might be swayed if we can prove the tribute system disrupts trade routes. Cassian's finger traced borders. Corvin is against us, obviously. Nox will support me, but they're obligated to. Valdis will judge purely on legal merit. So we need Saren or Thriss, Alara said, ideally both. Cassian looked at her with something like admiration. You learn quickly. The second night, they taught her about vampire feeding customs. Consent is everything, Isolde explained. The first law written into the Codex, a vampire who feeds without permission faces execution. No exceptions, but the rogues Alara started are lawless precisely because they've abandoned that principle. They're already condemned, just waiting to be caught and destroyed. Cassian leaned forward. When a vampire feeds from a consenting human, it's a transaction. Blood for protection, blood for coin, blood for companionship. The human always has the power to refuse. What about blood bonds? Like ours? Those are rarer. More intimate. Isolde glanced at Cassian. A blood bond implies ongoing exchange, mutual dependency. It's why the court will scrutinize your relationship. Bonds can be used for manipulation. But ours isn't, Alara said firmly. We know that. You'll have to convince them. Cassian's voice was gentle. They'll ask invasive questions. About how the bond formed. How often I feed from you. What influence I have over your thoughts. Do you have influence over my thoughts? No, the bond lets me sense your emotions, not control them. But some vampires have abused such bonds in the past, which is why the court is cautious. Alara absorbed this. Then I'll answer honestly. Tell them I offered freely. That you've never forced anything. Even honesty can be twisted, Isolde warned. Be prepared for them to suggest you're too influenced by the bond to recognize manipulation. The third night, Cassian taught her about vampire weaknesses. Silver burns us. Iron disrupts our magic. He showed her a silver coin, held it carefully between 2 fingers. Sunlight weakens us considerably. We can survive it, but we're vulnerable. Most elder vampires avoid daylight entirely, like you do, like I do. He set the coin aside. Decapitation kills us permanently, as does a stake through the heart. Though that's harder than legends suggest. You'd need tremendous force. Fire can destroy us if hot enough and sustained. Why are you telling me this? Cassian met her eye steadily. Because if something happens to me at the court, you need to be able to defend yourself. And because I trust you with this knowledge, the weight of that trust settled over her. I would never, I know. But others might try to force the information from you. If they do, the bond might protect you. What you know, I know. So harming you alerts me immediately. He reached across the table, covered her hand with his. We're connected now, Alara. Your safety is my safety. The fourth night, they spoke of immortality. The bond will change you, Isolde said. You're already noticing, I think. Healing faster, needing less sleep, more aware at night. Alara nodded. She felt its subtle shifts in her body, like something was rewriting her from the inside. It's not true immortality, Cassian said. You'll still age, just slowly. Still need food and rest. But you'll be more resilient than normal humans. Harder to kill. How long? Alara asked. If we maintain the bond? To centuries, possibly. 3 if the bond is very strong. He looked away. I'll watch you age. Watch you change. And eventually, I'll watch you choose to end it or let time take you. You sound like that frightens you. It does. His voice was barely audible. I've lost everyone I've ever cared about. Knowing I'll lose you too, eventually. It's already harder than I expected. Alara's heart ached. She wanted to promise him forever, but she was still mortal, still temporary. Then we make the time we have matter. He looked at her then, and in his eyes she saw centuries of loneliness beginning to crack. Yes, we do. The 5th night, they discussed strategy for the hearing. Speak clearly. Make eye contact with the house leaders, not just the moderator. Cassian had her practice her testimony again and again. When they try to rattle you, stay calm. Don't let them see fear. What if I am afraid? Then hide it. Project confidence. He paused. Or let them see your anger instead. Anger is stronger than fear. They respect strength. Alara practiced until her voice was steady, her posture confident. Cassian and Isolde took turns playing hostile questioners, throwing accusations at her until she could respond without flinching. You're a natural. Isolde said finally. You have the bearing of someone who survived hell. They'll see that. The 6th night, they spoke of what came after. If we win, Alara said quietly, her daughter asleep in her arms. What happens to us? Cassian was silent for a long moment. That depends on what you want. I want my daughter to be safe, to grow up without fear. That's a given. I mean, do you want to return to human society? Try to rebuild a normal life? Alara looked around the safe house at Isolde reading an ancient tome, at Cassian watching her with barely concealed longing, at the maps and weapons and evidence of a world she'd never imagined. I don't think I fit in that world anymore. Then what? She met his gaze. I think I want to help you. Keep doing this, finding tribute systems, stopping them, making sure no other mother has to watch her baby be taken. Something blazed in Cassian's eyes. That would mean staying in this life, traveling with me, facing constant danger. I'm already in constant danger. At least this way, I'd be doing something about it. She shifted her daughter gently. And I'd be with you. The confession hung in the air between them. Cassian crossed the room slowly, knelt beside her chair. Alara, I need you to understand what I'm feeling for you goes beyond the bond. Beyond duty, I know. Her hand found his face, traced the sharp line of his jaw. I feel it too. You're mortal. Human. You deserve a normal life with someone who can give you daylight and normalcy. I don't want normal. I want this. I want you. He leaned into her touch, eyes closing. This is madness. Then we're both mad, she smiled. Besides, I think we're past the point of pretending there's nothing between us. Chapter 10. The night court of Enmore rose from the mist like a crown of stone and shadow. The city was older than any human settlement Alara had seen. Ancient towers, spiraling toward a moonless sky, streets paved with black marble that seemed to drink in light. Everywhere she looked, vampires moved through the darkness with predatory grace. Hundreds of them, perhaps thousands, gathered for the court session. Stay close, Cassian murmured, his hand at the small of her back, and remember, show no fear. Alara clutched her daughter tighter, the baby mercifully asleep against her chest. Isolde walked on her other side, fully healed now, dressed in formal robes that marked her as a scholar witness. They left the safe house at sunset, traveling by carriage through territories Alara couldn't name, arriving just as the court bells tolled midnight. The central chamber was a cathedral of darkness. Vaulted ceilings disappeared into shadow, and 5 thrones dominated a raised dais, one for each house. Already, vampires filled the gallery, their eyes gleaming in the torchlight, watching as Cassian led Alara down the center aisle. She felt their stares like physical weight, predators assessing prey, but she kept her chin high. her step steady and projected the confidence Cassian had taught her. House Knox approaches. A voice announced, echoing through the chamber, Enforcer Cassian and his claimed blood witness. They stopped before the days. The 5 house leaders sat in judgment, ancient creatures who'd ruled for centuries. Alara recognized the sigils from her lessons, the silver wolf of Knox, the open book of Saren, the crossed swords of Corvin, the merchant scale of Thrus, and the balanced crown of Valdis. Lord Valdis spoke first, his voice like grinding stone. Enforcer Cassian, you stand accused by House Corvin of kidnapping a human witness, interfering in their territorial jurisdiction, and forming an inappropriate blood bond to influence testimony. How do you answer? Cassian's voice rang clear. I answer that House Corvin lies to protect their complicity in a conspiracy against vampire law. The human, Alara, is my blood witness under the law of sanctuary. I claimed her legally, as is my right as enforcer. And I will prove that Corvin and others have been orchestrating tribute systems that violate the Codex's most sacred law. No force feeding. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. On the Corvin throne, a scarred vampire with dead eyes leaned forward. Bold words, but where is your proof? All we have is a human woman who would say anything to please a vampire who controls her. I control nothing, Cassian said coldly. The bond allows me to sense her emotions, not dictate them. And I have evidence beyond her. Testimony. Isolde stepped forward, producing a leather case. Documentation from 7 villages across 4 territories, all practicing tribute systems, all contacted by the same traveling merchant of vampire using the name Silas Marrow. She spread parchments across the floor before the days. Records of children taken, testimony from surviving family members, and this, she held up a sealed letter, correspondence between Silas Marrow and House Corvin steward discussing payment for recruitment services. The chamber erupted. Vampires shouted, argued, demanded to see the evidence. Lord Corvin's expression remained carefully neutral, but Alara felt Cassian's grim satisfaction through the bond forgeries. Corvin said flatly, manufactured evidence to discredit my house. Then let us examine them, Lady Saren suggested, her voice scholarly and precise. She was younger looking than the others, with ink-stained fingers and sharp eyes. If they're forgeries, testing will reveal it. Lord Valdis nodded. Bring the documents forward. We will verify their authenticity. He looked at Alara, and we will hear the witness speak. Alara's heart hammered, but she stepped forward, feeling Cassian's steady presence through the bond. May the first approach the throne. Valdis gestured permission. Alara climbed the dais steps, aware of hundreds of vampire eyes tracking her every movement. She stopped before the 5 leaders, meeting each gaze in turn. I am Alara of Millbrook Village. 3 weeks ago, my village's council sentenced my daughter to death, gave her to rogues as tribute, as they'd done every 7 years for longer than I'd been alive. Her voice didn't waver. My crime was refusing to disappear quietly when my husband decided he wanted a wealthier wife. So he claimed my daughter wasn't his, made her eligible for sacrifice. And the council agreed. A domestic dispute, Corvin dismissed. Hardly proof of conspiracy, is it? Alara turned to face him directly. A man named Silas Marrow came to my village a year before the tribute was due. He spoke with my husband, with the council. He asked questions about families with young children, about who had debts or ambitions. And then, conveniently, I was accused of adultery. My daughter was declared a bastard, and she became the perfect tribute, politically useful to sacrifice. She gestured to the documents Isolde had presented. Those papers show the same pattern in 7 villages. Silas Marrow visits. He identifies vulnerable families. He arranges for those families' children to become tribute candidates, and then he collects payment from House Corvin for recruitment. Even if true, Corvin said, it proves nothing against my house. We cannot control every merchant who uses our name, can't you? Cassian's voice cut through. Silas Marrow used Corvin seals on his correspondence, traveled with Corvin guards, and the payments to him came directly from your house treasury. He produced another document. I have the financial records, obtained legally through my authority as enforcer. The gallery exploded in accusations and denials. Lady Thrus raised a hand for silence. This is disturbing. But the question remains why? What benefit does House Corvin gain from these tributes? Control, Isolde answered. Villages indebted to rogues are easier to manipulate, and the rogues themselves become dependent on Corvin's organization. It's a network of leverage, built on the blood of children. Speculation. Corvin sneered, but Alara saw unease in his eyes. Lord Valdis studied Corvin with cold assessment. We will investigate these allegations fully. If evidence supports conspiracy, there will be consequences. He looked at Alara. You have testified bravely, mortal woman, but we must also examine the bond between you and the enforcer. Step forward. Alara descended the dais and stood beside Cassian. Valdis gestured, and a vampire in scholar's robes approached some kind of magical examiner. "This will not hurt," the scholar said, "but it will feel invasive. I must examine the bond's nature." She placed her hands on Alara's temples. Power flooded through Alara's mind, far and probing, sifting through her memories and emotions. She felt the bond with Cassian flare bright, felt him reach for her through it, steadying her. After a moment, the scholar stepped back. "The bond is mutual and freely formed. I detect no compulsion, no manipulation. The human's will is entirely her own." Relief washed through the chamber. Lady Saren smiled slightly. "Then her testimony stands unchallenged." "One more question," Lady Thra said. Her merchant's eyes shrewd. "What do you want from this court, Alara? Justice, revenge, compensation?" Alara looked at her sleeping daughter, then at the assembled vampires. "I want no other mother to go through what I did. I want the tribute systems ended. I want the villages free from fear." She met Thrasa's gaze. "And I want House Corvin to answer for using children as currency." Strong words from a mortal, Corvin said. "You forget your place." "My place," Alara said quietly, "is standing witness to your crimes. That's what blood witnesses do. We tell truths that powerful people would rather stay hidden." Cassian's pride blazed through the bond. Lady Saren actually laughed. "She has spine. I like her." Lord Valda stood and silence fell immediately. "The Night Court will deliberate. House Corvin, you will surrender all records related to Silas Marrow and the tribute systems. Enforcer Cassian, you will continue your investigation with full court authority. And the mortal woman Alara is confirmed as blood witness. Any house that harms her will face my personal judgment." He swept his gaze across the chamber. "This session is adjourned. We reconvene in 3 days with our verdict." The formal pronouncement echoed through the hall. Vampires began filing out, many casting curious glances at Alara. House Corvin's delegation left quickly, rage evident in their stiff movements. Cassian's hand found Alara's. "You were magnificent." "We haven't won yet," she said. "No, but we're close." He looked down at her daughter, who'd slept through the entire proceeding. "And you kept her safe through all of it." Isolde joined them, grinning. "Did you see Corvin's face when you called him out directly? Priceless." They left the chamber together, stepping out into Ravenmore's eternal night. Alara felt exhausted but triumphant. They presented their case, shown the court the truth. Now they could only wait. 3 days, she said. "What do we do until then?" Cassian looked at her, his gold eyes warm. "We rest, we prepare, and we stay together. No matter what verdict comes, no matter what." Alara agreed. Above them, the city's towers pierced the darkness, ancient and enduring. And for the first time since this began, Alara felt like they might actually survive. Like they might actually win.